We do. Very excited. It's been a emotional roller coaster up and down. Some days you think you got it all figured out. Some days you're like, how long is this thing going to go? PPP came in. We got a bunch of sort of, yeah, we're there. And then you start to see cracks in the remote workforce. So it's definitely been an up and down, but very, very excited about our new branding. Jay, tell us, what are we doing? How are we reforming this live presentation? Well, look, there are two different ways to look at it, and I think we've seen that over the years. There are guys that have created mega firms, and I think there's a huge place for that because these guys have created systems that are in place and allow them to create a machine that just keeps on giving. And I felt personally, I was in that place pre-pandemic where I saw it happening. The flip side is we have a lot of people out there who have created partial pieces of it. Not everybody out there has a scaled firm. So whether you're one lawyer or two lawyers, maybe you have a few admin, very often I like it to be a mix, not just people who have gotten to the mountaintop, but people that are on that journey where they have some pretty cool hacks and best practices that can help people in real time get to the next level. But I think that mixing that in with people that are already there and have seen that and are at the point of scale would be a great balance for the show. Well, yeah, and as we talk about it, I would just say that keeping in mind, we're going to talk about passion, we're going to talk about scale, but I think one of the things that I've always stuck with is what's your widget, and keeping an eye on what it is that you're doing so that we can start to get metrics, help people think of metrics. What's your cost of acquiring that widget? What's your cost of working on that widget? And what's the margin on it? And I think that whether you're a large or a small organization,
No,
if
no,
you
no.
if you continue to focus on the fact that in fact that everybody has that same issue. And during the
Multiple.
pandemic, we've talked a lot on prior shows about people trying to pivot, understanding whether you're pivoting to something else. The question is it a pivot you have passion for? Is it a widget you can acquire cases on? And is it as you've pointed out, is it something you can successfully work on without committing malpractice? And those, if you keep looking at each thing through those eyes, I think to me that's the sort of guidelines that we should be looking at as we go through this process and finally, after about 10 years in the making, get to have this conversation. over the years we've struggled with it. It's one of the hardest things to do, and it's, as everybody knows, very important touch point. I have an entire person at this point dedicated to quarterbacking that issue. I've always, with Blue Shark, had cobbler shoes in the sense that every person I've gotten went over to Blue Shark to work on digital. And so finally, 12 years in, I now have a person as an assistant to me to fully be able to execute non-digital, sort of the reviews are digital, but working with the lawyers in order to do it. And so far, so good. We had a great week as far as numbers. Nalini's going to talk a little bit about the transition and getting to see those reviews live. But I think that what I'm going to take now that we have sort of the hands-on piece working, in the coming week, I want to add some software enhancements to work with the people. First, you need somebody to actually quarterback it and control it, but I'd like to be able to add some technology to it. And I'm going to work on that this week to see how can I supplement some pieces of software to enhance the process beyond the human touch.
Gotcha. And I'm hoping maybe I can get a thumbs up from the audience. We did get a couple of check marks there that my audio was cutting in and cutting out. Hopefully I've changed my microphone source, and that's going to help people to be able to hear me, because we certainly want to get this information out there. But what we're going to do now is we're going to bring Nalini into the conversation, because Nalini has got some information about some of the major algorithm changes that have been going on, some of the things that she's been seeing from a technical side. So let's bring Nalini into the mix here and see what she has to say. Hey, Nalini, how you doing this week?
Good. How's it going, guys? So like you said, I've got a little bit of an update on the algorithm update that we saw come out last Monday. So we're already almost at our 2-week mark for all their testing. We had seen a lot of 48 hours, people dropping out and coming back in, dropping out, coming back in. We're still seeing a little bit of that fluctuation. But for reviews, there's some good news. We started seeing those come back for legal 2 days ago. What we're seeing, though, is that while the review is coming back and you're seeing a review, it will say, 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. It'll actually tell you how long ago that was published. You're seeing the new ones coming on right away if people are starting to go to the leave a review button. But the one thing that is not happening is you're not getting the number of reviews updated right now. And so that also looks like it translates to your average, your star average. So if maybe you've gotten 10 new reviews, we saw as much as 10 new reviews come in on one of our Google My Businesses just this morning. So we're seeing a bunch of them coming through. Just stay tuned and wait it out for a couple more days, and you'll start to see those things pop up on the front end.
But Nalini, can I ask you a question about that? Do you think that's because they've actually restaffed the offices, or do you think they just sort of took the brakes off and are allowing these things to naturally post?
So I know that they are going to be having people work from home throughout the end of the year. They're no longer working under the assumption that they're going to roll people in June 1st. So that may be part of them starting to get people working from home. But I also think it's a part of, we saw that a lot of their efforts and their resources were going towards maybe this update that came out recently. So they were reallocating the resources now that a lot of those things are done. I'm willing to bet that they are going through and pushing out the reviews right now for people who only had a few. If you've got like 30 reviews that have been sitting there, you probably haven't seen yours yet. I've mostly seen 10 at the most come through. But at the same time, too, I think that they've been reallocating the resources to now doing reviews. And then next step will be probably turning on some more new features. And then I think they're actually going to get to their support stuff probably at the end. Complete opinion.
Yeah.
But
the support stuff would help me because, like March 12th, I went dark on one of my GMB listings. And I've been trying to get somebody to help me. I keep submitting it, and I'm getting nowhere with it. And just being dark on that, the pain, the torture of seeing suspended in my Google My Business account has just been killing me. I want to cry every day.
And I have a theory on this. That much of the Google support for GMB comes out of India, and that while domestically here in the U.S. by everybody working remote, it must be exponentially easier here than there. And my feeling is it has taken them longer to put people in a position where they could work. There were certain lockdown rules in India that were very strict, and it seems to me like they would have a much harder time getting a virtual workforce there than they have here.
That makes complete sense. I agree with that 100%. The other one quick thing based on what Jay just said is we have seen a couple more of these postcards being received. We got a couple of codes just this morning. So they were in different parts of the U.S. We're now seeing in the South, in the North, on the eastern side of the U.S. Mostly, I don't know about the West Coast because just don't have anything that's prompted right there now. But maybe Jay might be a good chance to take a look and see if you want to reprompt it at this point.
I may will try that. Hopefully I can get some action on that. Anything else about the changes in rankings coming about off of this most recent algo update that we need to know about? Because it seems like, as opposed to many other updates, this one still is impacting people on the daily. So tell me a little bit about that.
Definitely still just wild. I'm seeing it across many more regions now, whereas I was only seeing it in the bigger major markets. So now I am seeing it in some of those smaller city markets as well, that you're seeing the more spammy GMBs in the area. I am starting to see a little bit come back, though, where we have the people who are traditionally number one in the 3-pack, but you still see one spammy one. So it looks like they're trying to fix it and get more middle ground, but it's still not something that I'm trusting when I'm rankings.
And so from the price benefits point of view, and actually a bunch of Blue Shark clients as well, what we saw is that over the last 2 Mondays, starting on May 4th and again the following Monday, the traditional sort of 3-pack with the number one result, whoever had built that authority over the years, seemed to plummet, and that it would disappear for 48 hours and come back. And the same thing repeated the following Monday. This, from my perspective, was the most tumultuous changes. And again, I don't think in the end it's going to be as tumultuous. It'll come back to some sort of normalcy. But we saw the most velocity in the 3-pack we've ever seen from an algorithm update before. Normally, we're used to organic flipping around. And in this case, the organics seem remarkably stable, at least from the things I was following, compared to the 3-pack, all having something to do with proximity. Nalini's lectured a lot on, when you want a pizza or a pharmacy, you want something nearby. But with a lawyer, you want the best possible answer. And I think Google is trying to figure that out, and they've been pulling levers in that area with the algorithms, what it looks like to me, shifting one way and then shifting back. Some of us used to call it the Google dance in the organic side. It's almost like it's a new Google dance for the 3-pack. And thankfully, what it appears is the people that have paid their dues, have clean link profiles and have good local SEO, that they are popping back. But it's pretty scary when you see your stuff disappear for a couple of days.
And I think that's true. It really was mostly local. This is the second local specific that we've seen for the updates. Before it used to just be organic, but in the last 5 we've had one, and this is the second one that it's been known that it was local.
Yeah, that was the question I was going to have for you, Nalini. Historically, they mostly hit the organic results. But I was trying to think if there had been any more other 3-pack local. And I don't know, I'm going to ask you for your educated opinion as someone who's knowledgeable in this field. Seth, you might want to answer this too. It sounds to me like with Google's reliance on local, that we may be seeing more algo updates to the 3-pack in the future, many more even than what's going to happen to basic organic listings, because the 3-pack seems to be where they're getting the majority of their traffic right now to people that are looking for an answer. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I've also been preaching that the Google My Business is where we're seeing all the updates, the new features that come out. They're not coming out in organic. They're coming out on that Google My Business, where Google's trying to figure out how can they get data points of the engagement of folks in those areas with your branding. So I just think that it absolutely is becoming more important just from the heart of that Google My Business, seeing so much change. The local is what is the focus right now. And then Seth, what thoughts on that?
Absolutely. No, Google wants you on their property. They have to pay to the top where they make their money. So clearly that's expanding, right? We have local service ads coming, et cetera. But in the 3-pack, you don't leave the Google environment. You can do your entire, just like when you're, making a restaurant reservation, a hotel, an airplane, you can do everything within Google. Google loves that. They're keeping the eyeballs. I think there's that factor. And the other piece is, the organic algorithm is pretty sophisticated. The local algorithm still is imperfect. You speak to the experts in the space, right? You speak to a Joy Hawkins or any of or Ben or any of those people. They are there to help Google do a better job. There's still a ton of spam. There is so much spam in the 3-pack. If you go to something one step off your money terms, I did one the other day dealing with like dog bite lawyer in Maryland. The first three answers were all blatant spam. And Google's smart enough. They have resources. They could do something about it. And nobody knows. It's $1 million question. Why won't they clean it up? So I feel like they don't want to do it on a per, they don't want to do it by hand. They're trying to get an algorithm to work, but they'll figure it out. They're smart enough and wealthy enough to do it, but it's extremely frustrating. And so, yes, to answer your original question, which is we will see the most flux there because it's still not great. You still see spam slipping through. Exact match still works in the local algorithm of who appears, which is insane. We're in 2020. Why would spam not be filtered out and really get the best answer without those words in it? And we saw that years ago. I'm going to date myself and leave you with this. 10 years ago, Google did an algorithm update on organic where they didn't want to see exact match URLs. And so people who had them all of a sudden got pushed way down and said, wait, there are a lot of people with exact match URLs that are legit. And they eventually brought it back. They just didn't want to see people that had a URL with no real information on it, poaching clicks and then pushing them somewhere or selling them somewhere. I think we're going to see the same thing here, that Google's trying to figure out there may be terms that they want to show in the 3-pack that include keywords, but that right now use of keywords still moves the needle way too much, and they have not figured it out. And until they do, we're going to see updates.
On that, just one quick thing, too, that made me think a lot, what you just said. So Seth mentioned that, you've got the Joy Hawkins and these folks who are that liaison between local, normal humans who are just, Googling on it, and then the connection to Google saying, hey, here's a spammy listing, get rid of it. And so that's so true, Seth, that right now the only way to get rid of a spammy listing is to actually suggest an edit or to report it. And so this makes sense in even this update that we've seen, that this could be part of them learning where is all the spam and how do I control figuring out where that spam is in a more automated way. You're absolutely right that could be a big pain point that they've looked at in this situation. And to your point about keywords, Google trying to figure out where can we get information on keywords in your brand without having it be in your name, right, as like it being spammy. And so something that we did see a few months ago was under the reviews now, there's those filters. And so when you click on reviews and you see the filters, it's any word that's appeared more than 3 times in a review, so of the reviews that have been left for you. And so those words are now the way that Google's associating what words are the most important to describe your brand. And so if you have a practice area there, that would be a better way for them to say, hey, this brand, this Price Benowitz has people talking about personal injury, so I should relate it that way, but it won't bring in spam. So that's interesting because it might all come together with that's ways they're trying to do it.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me as an outsider, as somebody who doesn't do technical SEO, and it just sort of goes by the whims of what Google does to my site over years. It's really interesting to me to see that some of the stuff that worked on Google in 2010 is now working on Google My Business today. And I think it's just a matter of time, because I think it's just an order of magnitude, right? Back in 2010, they were finding, let's take the legal industry, which is by far small compared to some of the other industries, but you'd have 3 or 4 or 5 companies that were trying to cover, firms cover a larger geographic footprint. But when you go to local, right, in orders of magnitude, you have so many more providers that you have to watch out for spam. And it's almost like they needed to have their algorithm have a lot more artificial intelligence before they can even launch a product like Google My Business and then police it. And we're finding, I think now, that they're still not able to police it to the extent that it's necessary. But those days are coming, so it's almost like get your house in order now so that when those days come, you don't get really dinged.
Yep.
Couldn't agree
more.
All right, Nalini, any other things you need to add to us?
That's what we're going to be doing next week, or in the next couple of weeks. I did promise you guys that I'd be looking at review companies and review platforms, and so I've been talking with the folks at some of those bigger named review platforms such as Connect and Bird Eye and Podium, and I'm trying to hopefully get a nice little panel together where a few weeks from now we can get them all here. You can be asking them questions, that week if we know we'll have them on. We'll we'll let you know so that you can put your questions on the Facebook page and we can answer them in real time. But that would be really great to kind of see the distinguishing features as these guys are figuring out, the reviews and how Google's doing this as well and what new features can they bring to the table. They're all a little bit different in their own way.
Absolutely. And if anybody has any comments or questions, I know we got some earlier, but please, down below, post your questions, post your comments. If you have a topic that you want us to talk about, certainly, reach out to us, and Seth will give you our contact at the end of the show. But there's a great way that you can do something down below. Just leave a comment, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, that sort of thing, so that we can take your feedback and really improve the show. So, Nalini, we'll say goodbye to you. Thank you so much for being with us this week. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Yep. Bye.
All right, Seth, that was great. Nalini always brings great information, so I'm really happy with that. Let me ask you this, Seth. We both participated last week in John Fisher's mastermind, which is a great group of people there. And in the breakout groups, I heard from a couple of different things that people were talking a little bit about growth by way of really doubling down on your niche and trying to squeeze every drop out of it. And other people were thinking about growth in terms of expanding product lines, expanding practice groups, expanding your firm. You have built Price Benowitz in a very particular way in that you've added more things as you've grown. Tell me your thoughts about the two different ways to really grow your firm in a brief minute, because I think it's important for people to understand that there are other ways to grow your firm besides just launching a new vertical, but that could be very profitable, as you can testify to.
Yeah, and look, it's a frenetic discussion even internally. And right now, having a scaled criminal practice, we feel less good than we did a few weeks ago. But that said, I and you've lectured on this. Again, there are widgets, and I'm a big believer of going deep on a given widget. What I have liked, and part of it may be the ADHD, and part of it may be just interest in different areas or the challenge of it, is the idea of bringing other verticals in. But this isn't me saying, hey, I'm going to do it. I'm not an expert in family law or trust and estates. It's finding somebody who you can build around. Now, as a business owner, there's risk, right? There's risk in that, you got to get the right person, assuming, let's take for a minute that they know the substance, but they have certain control over it. Those clients, while you brought them in, are basically loved by that person. So there's a certain amount of business risk to it. But I feel like to bring something in, unless you're saying, I'm going to pivot myself and really embrace this new area of law and figure it out and own it, my feeling is, and what I've always said is, to bring something else in, there needs to be a substantive expert that you can point to, both for your own ability to sleep at night and for bar reasons, to say, yes, that person controls and knows the knowledge there. You can be the machine behind bringing the cases in, intaking, monetizing them, etc. But at the end of the day, if you don't have somebody that you trust and believe in, to me, you're doing your clients a disservice and yourself a disservice, because we don't want to have like a half-assed program. We want to have the best in each area. And that's sort of one of the struggles, because anything you don't touch, is not going to be done as well as yourself. But if you don't have an expertise in it, it's just too dangerous to dabble, in my opinion.
Yeah. What do you think about this? I know, in this post-corona time, there are lawyers out there that are thinking about expanding. Like, for us in a criminal defense practice, we took a huge hit. We're still suffering a huge hit in our own practice. Now we're limping through. PPP obviously helped. We've got, our partners in expungement practice. We're doing remarketing to old clients or clients who didn't hire us. And we're able to generate some income coming in. I have some other stuff that's working to keep the lights on, right? But would you suggest hiring a lawyer that knows that area as like a short-term consultant, just, to sort of ask those questions of somebody? Or do you think that may not necessarily be helpful because they're never going to be the entrepreneur that you are and look at things the way a business person has to do it? 99% of our people in our community, they don't think the way we do here. At Maximum Growth, they don't think about how we think about it at Mastermind or at Max Lawyer. It's really, we're a unique breed of people. So do you think it's helpful to bring a consultant in for a short term to ask questions, or do you think it's something you got to sort of go out and feel for yourself?
I think the thing that I've seen work best, if you're dabbling, is not, I don't use the word consultant, but an of counsel. If you have the ability to bring in cases, first you want to see if you can. It's one thing to say you're going to bring in family law cases, but you actually have to get them. So what I have found is rather than having an expense or a huge time commitment, if you find somebody who's a substantive expert in that area and you can bring them on as an of counsel and have an economic arrangement, let's say 50-50, something that complies with ethics rules and gives them what they want, you can generally at a higher split find legitimate, knowledgeable people that can test whether or not it's right for you. And for the most part, we've actually done that with many of the areas we've gone into or jurisdictions. But once you have deal flow, once you know, hey, I'm not going to dabble in family law, but I have a full caseload of cases, that's where you can pivot to somebody who's more of a pure practitioner who can get that done. And you can usually get a better margin for yourself than when you really have no leverage, because people will accept in any situation a lower split when there's a consistent deal flow rather than a partial deal flow, in which case you really have to super incentivize somebody to do it beyond what you could do if you're paying for all of their expenses and overhead.
That makes a lot of sense. So, Seth, I think we're going to wrap it up for this week. I know I had a little audio problems at the top of the show. I finally figured out how to work this soundboard that I've downloaded and figured out. But we were going to have Joey Vitale from Indie Law. It's why I've been rocking the Indie Law hat today. Unfortunately, when our pre-production happened, we wound up with some audio technical problems, which I solved while we were live here, but that prevented us from having Joey on the show. But we anticipate having him on in the next couple of weeks because he really does a great job of identifying where he can grow based on his research and knowledge into his market. And it's caused him to pivot a couple of times, which I think is a really interesting story. And then obviously, as we're changing to be Maximum Growth Live as part of the Maximum Lawyer brand, obviously we want to be able to talk a little bit about who our guests are next week. So Seth, why don't you talk about who our guests are going to be next week?
Well, we have we're hoping to get Jim and Tyson back and sort of have an official altogether launch of our new product and as part of the Max Law family. And then each week, as the comments come in, I will give it to what people are interested in and make sure that it is relevant. We can talk about what's interesting to us and hopefully that's interesting to other people. But keep the comments coming. Jay is Jay at RuaneAttorneys.com. I'm Seth at PriceBenowitz.com. We love talking about this. We'll talk about it whether we're on air or not. So keep the feedback coming so that we can create a product that everybody loves.
Yeah, absolutely, Seth. So with that, we're going to sign off here with this first edition of Maximum Growth Live. I'm Jay Ruane. That's Seth Price over there. Thank you so much for being with us and have a great week. And we'll see you here next Thursday again on another edition of Maximum Growth Live. Thanks, folks.